an interesting interview with my principal. Meet Jonathan Dyal.
This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Welcome to another episode of the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. Today is a very special episode because my students are filming and recording this episode, the Sherwood Showstoppers. And I'm also co-releasing this with my school because this is about my principal, Principal Jonathan Dyal. So back in the fall, I tweeted out that he had observed me like the 5th time in the first 5 weeks of school, but that's a good thing. Teachers, it can be a good thing when you have good observations going on. And my friend George Couros reached out to me and said, "Hey, Vicki, I'm writing a book about great principals. Would you write about Principal Dyal?" Well, he's a humble man, and it did take a little bit of getting him to agree to do that. But I wrote a chapter for the upcoming book being released on April 19th, 2024 by George Couros, highlighting amazing principles. And the title of the chapter is Clear and Present Principles. So thank you for coming on the show today, Principal Dyal.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
One of the first things I noticed about you was your strategy of observation. And in pre-planning, what did you tell us?
So I told you that I would be in your rooms often, as much as I possibly could, and that I wasn't there to get you or look for mistakes, but I really just wanted to know and be present and know what was happening in your classrooms.
Okay, so I'm kind of used to, these are called the showstoppers, that kind of when the principal comes in, it's a showstopper because it's like, clipboard and 50 minutes, but that's not your strategy. What is your strategy behind how you do teacher observations?
Initially, I start with lots of clear communication. I think that's super important. Letting teachers know during pre-planning and during the first couple weeks of school, this is what I'm looking for. So this year, our biggest focus were formative assessment, technology integration. I want to see engagement in our students, and then relational aspects, which is kind of hard to quantify. But I told them that I would be in classrooms often. I told them that I wouldn't stay for long and that I just wanted to see what was really happening. So often administrators come in once or twice a year at most, and typically teachers prepare what we like to call a dog and pony show, where they're really putting on the best lesson that they can come up with. They're trying to check all the boxes, but that doesn't really give principals a good idea of what's happening on the day-to-day in teachers' classes. And that's what I really wanted to know, was what was happening on a daily basis. So starting with clear communication and then following that up with being in the classrooms often, and then as quickly as I could, responding with written feedback that the teachers could read. The first month, 2 months, I really just wanted to highlight all the great things that our teachers were doing. We see great things every day in our classes here at Sherwood, and I just wanted teachers to know that what they were doing was great. At our school, often teachers feel like they're on an island because they're the only teacher in a certain content, and I wanted to let them know, one, that they're doing great things like everybody else, but two, just really highlight specifics that I saw in their classrooms that were great for our students and great for them as educators.
So I liked that you didn't always observe the same class. You were in my AP Computer Science principals, you were in my 9th grade, my 8th grade. You observed my film class, which you're really doing right now. I may get an observation email after this. It did take me about a month to relax because I just wasn't used to that. But then after that, something starts happening. What starts happening after we teachers just get used to you being in our classrooms?
Sure. So one of the things that I love now, after being in classrooms so often, is I don't have to have a set schedule of when I'm going to see a teacher, or I need to get in this class or whatever. Teachers come to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Dyal, come and watch this lesson. We're doing this really cool thing." Or, "Hey, I'm really having a hard time teaching this content," or, "Hey, I want to try something new. Will you come and observe and give me feedback on what you think?" And so now it's no longer about me having to force entry. Don't just have to come in all the time, but teachers come to me and say, "Hey, I want you to come in." Prior to, I think there was a lot of anxiety, which is very common in teachers, to be anxious when administrators walk in because it doesn't happen very often. But the more that I was in, teachers felt comfortable. Like you said, It kind of broke down. They started inviting me in. And so now I just get to go and see the great things that our teachers were already doing, but they want me to be a part of it.
Well, and it just kind of feels like a normal part of our day for you to come in, and now everybody wants you in, of course. Now, some principals will listen to this podcast and go, "But Jonathan, you don't understand. I'm in meetings all day. I don't have enough time." And that is a struggle. So how do you keep yourself on track with observations? Because it can't be easy.
Please know that there's always room for growth. I like to be in every class every day, but that does not happen. I strive for 2 or 3 visits a week, But even sometimes that doesn't happen. So what I've told myself is if I can get in a classroom, even if it's just for 2 or 3 minutes, so that the teacher sees me, I continue to maintain that comfort level with the teacher. The students see me so that they're comfortable when I come in, because that's another whole animal, is sometimes the students want to perform a certain way when the administrator is in the classroom. So they're comfortable with me coming in. So even if I can just get in for 2 or 3 minutes at a time while a lesson is taking place, it's enough to maintain so that when I need to do the big observation or I feel like there's a critique that needs to be made, I have that open door and I can set aside a larger chunk of time to get in and really sit down and dive into what's happening.
Well, and it's just like with students. Like, I want to give positive feedback to parents. I want that first email that goes to parents to be positive, so that when there's time for a conversation about behavior that needs to change, we've already got a positive relationship. And so parents don't feel that angst that we teachers might feel. So there's another piece that I wrote about. That's about how you build relationships with students. So this whole film class will probably laugh behind the set that one day one of my students came in and said, "Hey, we're playing a pickup basketball game with Principal Dyal in the gym." And I'm thinking, oh, what's up with that? Which is awesome. I think it's great. So what is your strategy for how you build relationships with students? Because that's important too.
I think first and foremost, kids have to know that I'm in their corner. And in order for them to feel that way, I've got to be bought into the things that they're bought into. So we have students that like film, so I like to see what the film class is doing. I know that we spent some time earlier in the year talking about dreams for a studio, and I got to be a part of that and see their excitement was great. Some of our students like to play sports, so when I have an opportunity to play basketball with them, I want to do that so that they see that I'm more than just a principal that's sitting in the office that's calling parents when there's a situation, getting kids in trouble if they misbehave, that they see that I'm just a normal guy and that I like to participate in the hobbies, and that once I have them realizing that I care about them and that I'm bought into the things that they're bought into, then they're much more likely to buy into the systems that we have in place as administrators and then as teachers too. So being able to connect with them relationally through their interests is extremely important. When I was a teacher in the classroom, I had this group of students that wasn't really into sports. I had a little bit of trouble connecting with them, but I realized that they were all avid readers and they all typically read similar books. So what I started doing in my time outside of the classroom was reading the books so that we could have conversations about more than just what I was teaching in my math class that day. We could talk about the books that were interesting to them, and then in return, they wanted to perform for me. And it's really no different in an administrator chair. We buy into what our kids have bought into, we pique their interest and let them know that we're interested in those things as well, and then they, in return, buy into what we have for them.
Something I always say is that you have to relate to educate.
That's right.
A great education is built on a solid relationship where the students know you care. Love is not a 4-letter word. Love is a good thing in appropriate ways, that you care and that you care about what they're doing and their lives, and you understand that sometimes they have a bad day, and you know you tend to receive the grace you give, and it's about relationships. So I think the big message that I want everybody listening to the show to understand is that it is a partnership. We are partnering with parents, we are partnering with students, principals and teachers. We are partners. We are not islands and enemies. Like, that does not work. And certainly you can have a culture that can get off track, but that these are important things that need to happen. Now, the last piece I want to talk about, I interviewed a lot of people on campus to do your chapter, and there's a lot of quotes from different people, but one of the funny things that just made me laugh was that one of the teachers said, well, somebody was writing an essay about you earlier in the year, and they said he teleports. They didn't understand how he moved around the campus. What is your strategy? Because that is actually a great strategy. We don't know where we're going to be, except middle school lunch. We know you'll be there, but we don't know where you're going to be when. So what's your strategy for moving around the campus?
So it started when I worked in a previous school system, but just really having a proactive approach to everything. The school system, you know, there were different issues that would pop up, and I found that if I was just sitting in my office all the time, everything that I did in response was reactive. So teachers would call and let me know there was an issue here, they had trouble with this or whatever, and I had to react. But when I got out from behind my desk and started walking hallways on a regular basis, students knew that they never knew where I was going to be. So they had to be careful with what they did, and it really curbed a lot of the behaviors that we had. And so I use that same strategy here of just wandering the halls, for lack of a better term. I want students to see my face looking in a window. I want teachers to know that they can reach me just by opening their door, that I'm right there if there's a situation. And so if I ever find that I'm at my desk for more than 25 or 30 minutes, other than meetings, I understand meetings sometimes take hours and we have to do that. I get up and I just walk a hallway. Just walk up and down the hallway, just to the door, look in a couple classes, open a couple doors, check on things. And that kind of keeps teachers at ease, recognizing that administrators are there. And students may be a little bit on edge, understanding that you never know when Principal Dyal is going to be around.
Yeah. And those are great strategies. It's not a punitive gotcha thing.
Sure.
It's just, hey, I'm here.
Right.
That does handle all issues. I mean, as IT director,
One of my strategies was always walk the halls before school, because that's when teachers would tell me what they had going on with their computers. And you got the same with the students. So George Couros' book, I will link to it in the show notes, about a lot of stories with amazing principals. Shout out to George for letting me tell the story about my amazing principal. To give him credit, Jonathan had no idea I was tweeting that. I had just been reviewed, for the 5th time, and it was after school, and I had just received that email and then sent out the tweet. I was like, wow, these observations are actually awesome. I like them, because I didn't know how I felt about it. And this is his first year, and he's made a definite impact. And these are a lot of good strategies that I think that many principals will learn from, and I hope they do. Thanks to my film crew for doing a great job. Thanks to you, Principal Dyal, for coming on the show. All our information, as you can reach here, know what we're doing, will be available in the show notes. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Pat.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you want more content from Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook, X.com, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.